they actually make really good like high-end recording microphones as well. And I know they make some USB mics now.
Brilliant.
Can you see me?
Actually, I can't, not yet.
Let's see. Let me add start video. Oh, there it is, man.
Oh, perfect. Yeah. Hi there.
Okay, cool. Nice to meet you, man.
Nice to meet you as well. And apologies about, not really being able to intersect our schedules. It's been kind of hectic here, so I apologize about that.
No problem, man. I'm glad we could make it work. So it's all fine.
Thank you. Well, I was thinking maybe of, let's say, tracking back or going backwards. So in that respect, I was actually going to start by asking you about a new single because I had a chance to listen to it and it sounded so great. And I'm really curious about how that came to be. And especially, given all the elements like the lyrics and the Rickenbacker guitar and like the folk rock arrangement, after so many years of songwriting, does that sort of happen by accident?
No, I don't think anything's by accident. It's all by years of being on the planet, absorbing. And, when I grew up listening to music in New York as a kid, in Brooklyn, New York, there was this great radio station called WABC. In fact, it was 77 WABC. Like aren't you ALT 77?
We are, yeah. Exactly.
That's cool, man. So we got the 7-7 connection there. So this radio station played, and by the way, growing up in the 60s and 70s, that was the renaissance, I think, of rock and roll. That was the most fertile period of music, popular music, I think, in the history of humanity. And no offense to modern music, but I don't think a lot of music that you hear on the radio today and what they consider hit radio today is something that would have longevity. There's a couple things, but I think they're few and far between compared to that Renaissance period, which really, it's sort of, obviously the 50s music and blues, American blues, all fed into the equation, but really the folk rock era of, starting kind of with like Bob Dylan and the Byrds and certainly the Beatles, spanning to like, into the 80s, but really the late 60s and early 70s, it was the most fertile and timeless period, sort of like the rock and roll Shakespearean age in a way, because it's all so historical, So I grew up listening to, they would play the Byrds, Mr. Tambourine Man, and then they would play Mellow Yellow by Donovan, and then they would play a James Brown song, I Feel Good, or a Jackson 5 song, or some sugar pop song like Yummy, Yummy, Yummy by the 1910 Fruit Gum Company.
Right.
So there was all these, the other thing that was happening there was all these great melodies, It was sort of like a pop song then had to have great melody. Where now I think it seems like melody has gotten lost in this landscape of sounds, of it's like sonic landscape, as opposed to this really memorable, lyric and hooky, memorable lyrics and themes and melodies have been replaced by sounds, like, oh, isn't that a great kick drum sound? Isn't that great, that's a crazy synthesizer sound. That's all fine and good, but for me, if it doesn't start with the song, all that other stuff is worth shit. It's not, it has no value to me.
That was actually,
I'm sorry, go ahead, man.
No, that was actually one of the things I was going to ask you, because the melodies in the two songs, the single and the B-side, Hand Me Down, they're so strong. But now it seems that pop music, the one thing that it's really kind of given up on are the melodies. It's more rhythm oriented.
It's disturbing to me, it's because maybe that's just, it's a generational thing, but it seems like an essential part of why people, why, like in folk music, like any culture, whether it's, Italian folk music, German folk music, Polish folk music, Romanian folk music, American folk music, the one thing that it all has in common is these memorable melodies, these, it's like you hear a polka one time, you know what the melody is, Now it's like I don't walk away humming any of these songs. And I grew up humming every song. As soon as I heard it one time, I would walk away singing it. And then I just lost you for some reason. I'm sorry, give me 1 second.
No worries.
My computer's doing some kind of weird computer thing right now.
No worries at all.
Okay, so let me get back to you. Hold on 1 second, brother.
Yeah, sure. I was just gonna say it's really interesting that I heard this like bit of interview from Noel Gallagher, who played in Oasis. He was up for an award for best songwriter, and
Yes.
he was nominated for the award. One person, but some of the other people that were nominated, each song had like 6-7 songwriters, and he was really surprised, like, what do you all do for this one pop song? It seemed really bizarre to me.
That's right, man. I mean, Bob Dylan, he sat down in a room by himself with a typewriter and a guitar or piano, and he wrote these songs. In fact, I was watching this documentary about Nashville songwriters last night. It's actually pretty good. It was on, I think it was on Amazon, their video program, Prime Video,
Right.
And these great Nashville writers, and I've actually, Shattered was written with a friend of mine that is a Nashville songwriter. I wrote it about 10 years ago on one of my trips, like songwriting trips. I'd go down and write songs with all these great writers down there, And I usually, most songs for my record, I do write by myself. I just always have, I've written songs for other people, sometimes with them or sometimes by myself. But 99 times out of 100, I've always written my own songs for my records, But this one time I wrote with this Nashville writer. But the point being, even these Nashville writers, they'll say, I got this great hook idea or a title. And so I decided to call my friend, who's a great track person, who'll come up with a great track, and my other friend, who's a melody person. And I'm thinking, man, I mean, John Lennon and Paul McCartney didn't call 8 other people to write those songs,
Right.
I just think, it's interesting how it's become sort of, and it's cool, the communal thing, but who's like, if you're contributing a bass drum sound to, it's like, oh, I got this great drum sample I want to use on this song. It's
Right.
like, how is that, making the song better? Maybe it's making the production sound better or interesting. But getting back to your first question, when I write songs, I hear sounds, it kind of comes in under the best circumstances, it comes in as a melody and lyrics, and I'll actually hear the arrangement. I'll hear what the drums are doing. I'll hear what the guitars sound like, if there's Hammond B3 organ, or maybe what the bass part is, So with Shattered, when I started to arrange it for my record, because me and Christina Aldendeifer, the Nashville writer that I wrote it with, when we wrote it on acoustic guitars in her kitchen, and I made a voice memo and I brought it home and demoed it. In the middle of demoing it, I realized that I kind of like this song. I might want to use this for myself one day, And then 10 years later, I did, But one thing, when I started to arrange the song for my record, I heard, it's like I hear Rickenbacker guitar, I hear a 12-string chimey guitar. So, there's like it's like a palette of, colors and textures, and it's like, oh, I hear aggressive guitar here, right? I want the slide to sound a certain way, because a slide guitar can sound many different ways, like, the way Duane Allman makes it sound, or the way Johnny Winter makes it sound,
Right.
or it's all, or Derek Trucks, it's all very, or David Lindley from Jackson Browne. They're very different tones. So, and when I was working on it with Steven, he suggested, actually, he loved the slide part that I came up with. He said, can you make it like a little wider, like maybe run it through a Leslie or something, So I did some processing to it that kind of gives it a little more depth, and so it kind of speaks a little more boldly, and I wrote this slide part as a melody, something that is also memorable to me, because I always go, I'm adding this part of the song, like, aside from it, you have to finish an arrangement, you try to give each part significance so that it's helping your cause, it's strengthening what you're doing, as opposed to just putting something in, throwing in the kitchen sink just for the sake of having more things, So
Right.
it's important to have the right elements,
And I'm wondering, because the vocal melodies, because we mentioned them, and they sound effortless for your voice, and they sound brilliant. And I'm wondering if you write a song that maybe you don't intend to record it on your own, but you sort of have an idea that it's going to go to a different artist. Does that change the process in any way? For example, the vocal melodies and things like that, just so that they suit the different artists.
Absolutely. And more so than the melody, because I really think, a great melody could be sung by any good or great singer. A great melody is a great melody. So that is first and foremost. I think that the thing that would change, aside from the treatment of the arrangement, like, let's say a song like Shattered, if it was pitched as a cover to, trying to think of an artist, maybe a country artist, maybe the melody would be played on pedal steel guitar instead of slide. So the texture, but more so than changing the melody, it's more the key, like finding the right key for the singer. So you would, if a person has a higher voice, you would record it up, maybe have a singer, when you're pitching a song for an artist to get a cover on, maybe you would find a singer that you feel the artist could relate to. So let's say if I was going to pitch Shattered to a female artist, let's say, for the sake of argument, I don't know, Brandy Carlisle or Bonnie Raitt, let's say. So I would I'd find, first of all, I'd have to find a female to sing it, and then someone that has kind of a rootsy sound that I felt that the artist could relate to, and you would treat the arrangement differently. Like, there's songs that are written as, let's say, a rock and roll song, but it could also be a soul tune, like an R&B song or a country song with the right treatment. It's all how you arrange the song that makes it more relatable to different artists, I think.
That makes sense. And it's very interesting. Now I'm wondering, because obviously, if I understood correctly, you started out from the very beginning, you were a songwriter and you were pitching your music to other artists. How has that changed, especially now, since I guess the songwriting landscape has changed? We talked about that earlier. How has it changed from, let's say, the music industry perspective?
Man, right now it's like the Wild West. It's like everything is in a state of change and flux, and it feels like chaos, because all these, everything is being, like, corporations are integrating into the fabric of what's going on, and they like companies like Spotify and Apple and all these companies, Amazon, these multi-billion-dollar corporations they figured out how to make the lion's share of the money, which publishers and artists and record companies used to make. So literally, we get what I used to make. Let's say if I would make $1 years ago, it's now less than a penny. It's streaming. Everything has been minimized for the creative community. It feels like a crime. It feels like I used to make a living as a songwriter. I'd write a song. If it became a hit, if it was on the radio a lot, and if it was on television or whatever, you knew you were going to make a certain amount of money if it sold a certain amount of records, and you'd be able to pay your bills. Now you have to do so many things as a creative person to make ends meet. Touring, which I love. I love touring. I've been with Stevie Van Zandt the last bunch of years. We didn't play in Romania. We played in Hungary, and we played in Poland. we played in Serbia.
Wow, so
We
really
didn't, for
close.
some reason, we didn't get to Romania. And my grandmother actually has Romanian roots.
Oh wow, really?
Yeah, my mom's mom. I think she was born. I mean, at the time, it was part of. I don't know if it was part of Russia, but she was born in Kiev. But I think someone like on her mom's side, or like a parent was from Romania. So it's like that Eastern European and thing going on. Like my dad has red hair.
Right.
Now it's silver. Now it's gray. But anyway, yeah, it's a very different world, man. It's
And do you think that's especially, let's say, greed that's driving that? Can it change, or is it has it gone so far that it's beyond change at this point, and this is the new system that they're going to use?
I mean, I have a feeling that corporations will fight tooth and nail to keep it this way because it's in their interest. It's just like, like gun laws. It's like when you take the profit out of guns, or when you take the profit out of cancer, when you take the profit out of all these really dark, negative things, keeping people in this country. I don't know about Romania, but in this country, it seems to me, and I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but it seems to me that, and I try not to be too political, because I don't want, there's no future in alienating people. I like to get along with people,
Sure.
But it seems that there's so much money to be made from people being sick from cancer, dying from cancer. So all this money is going into research, but you see very little progress being made with people's health. They're building these cancer research centers and hospitals by everywhere. They pop up everywhere. And it's like a factory for someone making a lot of money. It's like someone's making money, just like with food, and I know in Europe, there's much better guidelines for health, not using pesticides that can cause cancer, not using genetically modified organisms that they don't even know enough about. And does it cause cancer? Does it cause birth defects? Does it cause new diseases that, so all these things make me think. So unfortunately, as long as these big corporations are making so much money, then they're going to fight tooth and nail to keep that revenue coming in. So I wish I could be more hopeful, but I think nowadays, and in this country and many countries, it's like, especially westernized countries, consumers have so much power. Like all a consumer has to do is not buy anything for one day, and the corporations will get on their knees and say, okay, let's talk about this.
Right.
People are sheep. People are so comfortable with watching videos all day, distracted by their phones, continually being stimulated from all these places, distracted really from what, it's like years ago, there would be, they would form unions to protect people's wages and health insurance. All these things would be protected. I think they used to say that religion was the opiate of the people. I think technology is the new religion, and that's the opiate of the people. It keeps people distracted. It's not God, but it's this omnipresent thing that is, and there's a price to pay for it. Not being proactive in seeing positive change in our lives. I think I don't know how it is in Romania. Is it the same?
In many ways, the technology aspect, at least, it's pretty much the same. The one thing I would say maybe is better, that even though there's more poverty in countries like Romania, certain things like the medical aspects, I think are a bit better in the sense that if, God forbid you got sick, you would get some help, maybe not ideal, but some help,
Right. At least there's some socialized health available. Like, yeah,
Right.
we're here. It's still, it's like, all these companies are doing so well from it being the way it is. And they're the lobbyists that get all the politicians in office that protect their lion's share,
Right.
So,
And
I mean,
I was thinking that probably we might be missing out on the next Bob Dylan or next Roger Waters or Lou Reed, because it's such a difficult business to get into. Whereas before it was something of a business opportunity for a lot of people. It was realistic that you could do that.
yeah, man, I agree. Because you have the public's attention for such fleeting microseconds now. Everything is so, sound bites and breaking news, and so it's like how could anyone or anything stay in someone's consciousness long enough to realize their full potential? As that's a really good point. Because and there's such this huge amount of talented people out there that hasn't changed.
Sure.
It's just like Bob Dylan, that was the perfect place and time and synchronicity in the Beatles. It was all the planets were aligned, and at a time when there was only a few things to focus on. If the news was only on at 5 or 6 o'clock at night and 11 o'clock. Now it's breaking news 24/7, 365 days a year.
Yeah.
And that means it's not breaking news. It's two stories that are pounded, that are, I think they're designed to distract people from what else is going on, from what's really going on,
Right.
Fucked up, man. It's not cool.
I was always I always wondered, and I think this is the perfect place to ask this. For example, when I started guitar, I took some lessons, but there was also help from the internet, and especially now you can see videos and tutorials and things like that. And I was always very amazed by how people managed to learn such a complex skill before that. Like I was wondering how you learned it, or I'm sort of amazed that Dwayne Allman just picked up a guitar and could play slide guitar like that at his age. Just amazing.
Do you know the saying, necessity is the mother of invention?
Right.
So when I was a kid, I started playing guitar when I was 11, and that became the center of my universe. It was the holy grail, So, and I wanted to be a great guitar player. I mean, I was really driven, even at that young age. I took a few lessons, but most things that I learned, I would take my records, like a Jimi Hendrix record, let's say, or a Johnny Winter record, or Dwayne Allman or Allman Brothers record. And in those days, I had a tape recorder, and I would record, let's say, an LP. I would, a long playing vinyl record. I would record that with a microphone onto my tape recorder at, I believe, probably it was like 16 inches per second, 16 IPS. Excuse me. And then I would play it back. Let's say it was a fast Johnny Winter lick. Let me get my guitar.
Sure.
Hold on.
Amazing. Yeah. It's brilliant.
Of course, I don't have a pick, but anyway, so like a Johnny Winter lick, I wish I had a pick. These fast licks, what would happen is when you would record it on the tape recorder, and then put it to half speed, it was played half the speed, and it was the same exact key, an octave lower.
Oh, right.
So this lick, so you would, let's say this one lick, I was like, oh, I was fascinated with this Johnny Winter lick. So you would listen to it, it would be down the octave. Right? You get the idea. And it would be slowed down, so you would be able to hear the subtle nuance of what was playing, and then you would practice it slow, and first you would get the notes and practice it slow, and then you could play it up to speed. So that's literally how we did it. Nowadays, kids have such an advantage to going on and seeing some guy. Maybe the guy did that when he was a kid. Maybe he slowed his records down to half speed.
Right.
But now it's like he's able to show you. So it's a great opportunity for learning and growing quicker. But that being said, I think when you learn it that way, it maybe it even has a deeper impact, because you have to, how am I going to do this, man? It's like, I don't even know where I heard that you could do that, record it at half and play it back at half speed, but somehow it was in the ether, Yeah.
But I'm wondering, I think this might be very interesting to learn. When we started learning guitar, and it took so long to actually learn the basics, but we were so focused on, getting really fast solos down. But when you actually start to try and play with a band or get a gig, you learn that there's much more to that. And I'm wondering what that's like, given that you've worked with so many great artists. What's it like to sort of integrate your sound, but put it in, the focus of that kind of a specific style?
Well, it's very important. And of course, everything comes with experience, but you always have to be true to the music that you're playing at any given time, So, when I was younger, I was interested in some jazz, like fusion, jazz rock, fusion, funk. I played with some, when I was a kid, I played in these bands with black musicians who played very differently than I did. The music was different. So I learned a tremendous amount about, rhythm and blues and funk from them, as opposed to, and I've also, of course, played it with whites, and it would be sort of, it would almost be once removed, from the source of what it was, So, when I'm playing with someone like Stevie Van Zandt, our show was so diversified. It would be everything from, rock and roll, it would be hard rock, there would be funk, we did a James Brown cover. The new record, Steven's latest record, Summer Sorcery, has real kind of funk, James Brown, Kool and the Gang, sort of, even the horn parts were, so you have to be true to the bag of music that you're playing at all times. And the other thing I learned at a very young age, because I wanted to play a lot of notes. Like, I wanted to be the fastest. Everyone wants to be the fastest gun in their town,
Right.
And I joined this band when I was about 17, and it was a great opportunity. They were much older than me. They were recording at a studio in New York called Record Plant, where Jimi Hendrix' Electric Ladyland was recorded. Right. The first two really big Aerosmith records, Toys in the Attic, and John Lennon recorded his first solo record there. All these amazing gold and platinum records were made there. When I walked in that studio at 17, it changed my life, literally, But I would go, when I started working with these guys, we would do gigs, and I was practicing a lot. I was playing, at one point I was probably playing 6-8 hours a day practicing. And we'd go and play a set, and it was my turn to take a solo, and I had all these notes that I needed to get out because I was playing so much. And we'd get off the stage and they would scream at me, "What are you doing?" So I learned at a young age that less is more. Find two notes, find one note that satisfies. It's more sort of like the primal intention of a note, you can get a lot of emotion in one note. So I think, there's more to be learned from stripping it down, and I swear to God, in my whole life, I've gotten the deepest reaction from that, as opposed to flurries of notes,
Right.
So, and I've been very fortunate. I've played with Elvis Costello, I've played with Paul McCartney, I've played with Bruce Springsteen, I've played with some of my heroes, and I always try to be minimal and appropriate. So,
Right.
play what's necessary. Don't try to like get attention that, hey man, look at all this shit I could play. No one gives a fuck. Really, no one cares, man. They want you to be able to support the song, and that's what I require from everyone that if Stevie Van Zandt calls me to put a band together, these guys can blow, man. They can play notes like you've never heard. But the key is to play what's appropriate for the music and step out when it's your turn to step out. Otherwise, you want to support the song. It's really about the vocal and the song. And that's what people hear: the beat, people hear the melody, and everything else needs to support it, because otherwise it could just be a distraction that takes away from what they're really, the primal thing they're coming to witness,
Right. Right.
Yeah.
And I'm guessing, especially with Steven Van Zandt, because you have quite an ensemble and so many elements to the music. I'm guessing it takes more of a focus on not just the guitar sound, but orchestrating everything and just getting everything in tune, basically.
Absolutely, absolutely. And Steven, because of course it's Steven's vision and his arrangements, and Steven uses the horn section. I mean, it's 5 horns, but for the most part, unless someone is soloing, it's 5 guys creating one tremendous instrument. And excuse me, there's 3 background singers, 3 girls singing. They're creating one instrument. It's sort of, yeah, those are 8 people, but they're supplying, like one element. It's like the elements in Stevie's band it's drums, there's a percussionist, so those 2 go hand in hand. The bass goes in hand, of course, with the drums and the percussion. And then the upper layers, like the guitar, there's 2 guitars, me and Steven. There's 2 keyboards. One is really doing orchestration and B3, and one guy like Banana's playing piano, and the horns are really, everyone has their place. And if anyone gets out of line, it's not going to work, and they couldn't be in the band if they didn't understand that, and these guys are the best. They're really the best musicians in the world. It's like Clark Gayton, who plays trombone, he's played with Sting and he's played with Bruce, like these guys are sought after by Ron Tooley. When he was 17, trumpet player, he played on James Brown records. He played on I Feel Good, and he played on Papa's Got a Brand New Bag. And, when he was a kid, I mean, and Ron is a monster, he was Maynard Ferguson's trumpet player, so these guys are as good as you get, Rich Mercurio, great drummer, his dad taught drum corps in Rochester, New York. I don't know if you know who Steve Gadd is, but
Right.
Steve,
Yeah, sure.
Richie's dad taught drum corps, and Steve Gadd was one of his students. When me and Richie met Gadd, and Richie's dad was very ill at the time, our friend Ralph McDonald introduced us to Steve, and Steve said, Mercurio, he goes, and he remembered, of course, Richie's dad, and spoke of him with reverence, So it's like, that's like the lineage from where these people come from. And I think the reason that they are there is because they understand how you have to support the music.
Right.
Wholeheartedly. You get your moments to have a solo and walk out to the front of the stage and be acknowledged. But you save it up for that. There's no hot dogging when Stevie's singing a melody, If I'm singing in my band, like my guys, when I'm finished singing and they have a solo, that's when you shine, you know. But the thing that needs to shine all the time is the song and the singer. You know, it needs to be supported.
Right, makes sense, because you talked earlier about the songwriting and obviously the aspects that are most important about it. But I'm wondering, since you mentioned the Disciples of Soul, how did you connect with Steven Van Sant? And also, I'm wondering, um, in that particular ensemble, what does the role of musical director entail?
Okay, so I met Steven. The funny thing is we both grew up playing in New Jersey. You know, but I worked with we worked with many of the same people, like friends that we have in common, but we never met until 2014. I was called to play on, he was producing Darlene Love, who's one of the greatest singers in the history of rock and roll. She sang on all the Wrecking Crew records with Phil Spector. And she sang, you know, all the songs on the Christmas record, Phil Spector's Christmas record. For 30 years, she was on the David Letterman show singing Christmas Baby, Please Come Home. You know, she's one of the true iconic singers of the history of rock and roll. Like, you know, and she won the Academy Award for 20 Feet from Stardom. You know, she's acknowledged for how great she was. So I think when Steven's known her for a long time, promised to produce a record for her like 35 years ago, he told her. And finally, in 2014, he went in to do that. I was called to play guitar on the last song recorded on the record, which was a song called Night Closing In. Bruce Springsteen wrote the song. And my friend Rich, the drummer, Rich Mercurio, and my friend Lee Nadell, great bass player, they recommended me to the engineer to have me come do the session. And we got in the studio with Steven, and we worked on the arrangement, recorded it with the rhythm section within a couple hours. And a mutual friend of mine and Steven's had just passed away, a keyboard player by the name of Kevin Cavanaugh. Kevin played piano on all the early Southside Johnny and the Asbury Jukes records. And I'd been working a lot with Kevin for maybe 10 years up to that point, and met him probably in the 70s, you know, playing the Jersey Shore, or like early 80s, whatever it was. And so we kind of bonded on talking about these people that we were friends with, you know. And then after the rhythm section left, I spent probably the next 6 hours with Steven and the engineer in the studio. And Steven was giving me parts to play. Now, he took this Bruce Springsteen song and he really created a Phil Spector arrangement, like a wall of sound on this particular song. So Steven, as the ultimate historian, knew how Phil made records. So everything was recorded multiple times, or back then he would have, if it was a bolero guitar part, you know, he would have 4 guys doing that. So he would have that, you know, in the recording, you know, but being that it's modern recording, I had to do it 4 times. You know, so it was a 12-string acoustic guitar 4 times. Then there was a 12-string electric part 4 times, 12-string electric 6-string 4 times, and a couple of whatever bells and whistles. You know, and it's like, you know, when you play it, your hand starts cramping, you know, but you can't be a crybaby. Anyway, at the end of the day, I think Steven realized that, you know, anything he could kind of dish out, you know, to create his vision, I could give back to him quickly. And we bonded. So a few months later, when he released Darlene's record, he thought of me as being her musical director. He said he wanted me to put a band together for her. And we did a couple shows with Steven and Darlene at the Whiskey in LA, the Whiskey A Go-Go. We did 2 shows, like CD release shows, the Paramount in Asbury Park. And in Darlene's show, we did 3 Stevie Van Sant songs: Love on the Wrong Side of Town, Until the Good Is Gone, and Forever. And, you know, growing up in Jersey, you know, with Bruce and Steven, you know, there's a certain, you know, resonance about that music, you know. To me, and I love playing with Darlene. I loved being her musical director. But when we did the songs with Steven, it was the next level of this show for me. Just playing these great rock and roll songs with someone I truly respect, you know. And I think in passing, I just said to him, I said, you know, after one of the shows or rehearsal, I said, man, I said, this shit feels so good, man. I said, man, it would be so great if you would get out and do this music, man. You know, I think people need this music. And I don't know if I planted a seed or what, but I was musical director for Darlene for about a year and a half. I've been on tour, and Steven called me that they're doing this blues festival in London. And this guy, Leo Green, heard that Steven was going to be at Bill Wyman's 80th birthday party and asked if he would come play this blues festival. So Steven called me, he says, Mark, I got this call. Can you put a band together? You know, I put a band together. I got my best guys, you know. We did a week of rehearsals. We went to London. We did the show. And in the midst of it, Steven said, man, it's like, we were doing a lot of songs that Steven had written for other artists, plus Disciple of Soul songs, you know, Stevie Van Zandt songs that he recorded. But some covers, you know, like by the Electric Flag and Paul Butterfield Blues Band, Southside Johnny. And Steven realized that there's a record here, you know, and so we got back, we got back from London. The show was a great success. We got home and we went in, he said, when we get back to New York, we're gonna go in my studio, you know, literally the day after the election, when that guy, which I don't even want to mention his name because, you know, he's taken enough oxygen out of the universe. The day of, after the election, we went in the studio to start recording the record. And so we were able to channel our, you know, all of our energy about what had just happened into this record, which was good. It's good to have a creative outlet for joy, you know, for sadness, for, you know, apprehension. It's good to have an outlet, you know. So we recorded that record. And then Steven made me a co-producer on the record, and you know, and then we toured for over 3 years, you know. Basically, you know, I met Steven in 2014, and until the pandemic, you know, we were working side by side, you know. And then in the pandemic, after the pandemic, we would talk on the phone one day, April, about a month into the pandemic, into the lockdown. And he asked me what I was doing. I said, man, I'm mixing my record that I had a little pocket of time in between recording the Soulfire record, which was his first record in 25 years. Then he had 2 months of touring with Bruce. He went to Australia and New Zealand for 2 months. So I said, man, I should just go in the studio and record these songs that I'd kind of been collecting for a few years to make my record. We go in, I went in with Richie Mercurio and Jack Daly, the bassist. Jack was with Lenny Kravitz for many years, and my buddy Andy Burton was with John Mayer and Rufus Wainwright and Cyndi Lauper. And we went in 3 days, recorded 15 songs. So here we are 3 years later. Steven says, man, he says, I didn't know you were making a record. He says, send me it. So I said, I have some preliminary mixes. I sent it to him. He calls me back. He goes, man, I got some good news and I got some bad news. And I go, okay, give me the bad news first. He said, the bad news is, he said, no, I said, I'm going to give you the good news first. He says, I love a lot of these songs. He said, the bad news is, you know, I think some of them, I'd like to work on some of them with you. You know, we work on the arrangements a little further, the productions. I go, that's better news than the first news, you know? Because Steven, you know, aside from, you know, being in the business for 45 years, you know, working with Bob Dylan and Bruce Springsteen and Jackson Browne and Pearl Jam, you know, it's like he was able to bring, it's like this guy's going to bring some light to my record. You know, I was really happy about it, especially in the pandemic. It's like, is it the end of the world? You know, I'm sure you guys felt the same. Is this Armageddon? You know, it's like the zombie apocalypse, right? You go to the grocery store and, you know, you're waiting for someone to like start, you know, ripping your neck out and sucking your blood, you know?
Right.
So we spent the next couple months working on the record, and it was just the medicine I needed to kind of get through the pandemic. But so Steven's become a great friend and ally and creative mentor. You know, he's just one of the most generous people I've ever met. You know, and he always took the best care of the band on the road, and you know, just a real special human being. You know, really cares about people.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
brilliant. Uh, I guess I'm wondering, because you mentioned that he has become something of a mentor, and obviously since you've played with so many great people and especially great songwriters, well, I'm wondering about two things. And one is whether you still get nervous with playing with somebody that good and that famous, and do you still sort of take tips or steal ideas about songwriting, about arranging, about things like that, just from seeing them work? Because that must be, the greatest masterclass.
Absolutely, man. Well, number one, as far as nerves go, you know, at some point you're able to, take that nervous energy, I would call it, and just channeling it into, I think the best way to combat nerves is to be prepared.
Right.
Preparation is the most important thing. So, when we played a show in London and we knew that McCartney was going to be at the show, we didn't know if he was going to sit in with us or not. But we were prepared, I'm sorry, let me, I got to get you back here. My girlfriend just tried phoning in. I just got to text her. Okay, there you go. And I'm going to tell her that I'm on the phone on an interview. Yeah. So we were hoping that he would sit in with us, but he had just come off tour, So the way Stephen presented it to Paul was, Sir Paul, at the beginning of our show, just go and sit. He sat with his wife and Maureen, Stephen's wife, and he said, just go enjoy the show, and in the middle of the show, but he said, if you'd like to join us on anything, we have a couple of songs prepared. And we were prepared, because you never know, Right. So in the middle of the show, Paul leans over to Maureen and says, do you think I could go sit in with them? And it's like, I'm sure Maureen said, I think that would be cool, So anyway, we go to do our encore, and who comes floating on the stage is Sir Paul, So that's the perfect scenario, and something Stephen would do naturally. And I would, even before I worked with Stephen, I always knew you got to be prepared. So we had a song. We did. I Saw Her Standing There with Paul, and Stephen did of all things, a Little Richard arrangement of it. So it was that kind of rock and roll thing, and that's one of Paul's heroes. So it was just the perfect storm, It was like, thankfully he joined us, And that inspired a lot more going forward. We were in Liverpool a week later, and Stephen decided let's learn a set of Beatles music and do it at the Cavern in Liverpool, And we did that, we rehearsed on the tour bus, we would have these long trips on the bus. The band would be in the back, in the master suite rehearsing songs, So another, like, just always being prepared,
Makes sense.
And as far as, when you work with these people, you can't help, of course, but observe their method, and I think everyone, whether it's these people, whether it's, Paul McCartney or Darlene or whoever, or Peter Wolf, or Roger McGuinn, you just observe them. So like, you kind of immediately just kind of absorb some of their example just by your, especially as a songwriter, I'm an observer, I'm always watching. So it's not that you're stealing anything, but you're just kind of, you're in the presence of their example, And that being said, I've worked with young artists, and there's something to learn from everybody. Everyone has something to offer, and these people happen to have been extremely successful with their examples, you know. But essentially, I think you got to just keep your eyes and ears and your heart open to whatever can come in that you can learn and can nurture your craft, you know.
Great. And in closing, I'd like to ask you, well, one of my last questions is a bit of a geeky one, but a guitar geek one, but I think this is a great opportunity. I'm wondering, in all your career, and obviously we talked about the Rickenbacker, and you just played an acoustic guitar. I think it's an Epiphone. What do you think is the most versatile electric guitar? I guess because you usually.
Oh well, Fender Telecaster.
Really, it's very
My
interesting.
my first electric guitar was a Gibson Les Paul, 1974 Gibson Les Paul Deluxe, which I couldn't afford. A few years later, I couldn't afford a Stratocaster, so I, like an idiot, you know, I was 16 years old. I took a chisel, put 3 pickups on my 1974 beautiful cherry sunburst Les Paul.
Oh wow.
It's never going to be a Strat, you know. But anyway, you do stupid things when you're younger, right? Then I really became a Strat guy for many years. And then, you know, when I was younger, you know, I could only afford one guitar, really, you know. So I first had the Les Paul. But I would say in the last 20 years, I've come to realize that after being a Gibson guy for many years, and then being a Stratocaster guy for many years, and certainly having other types of guitars, like I have an ES 335, I have a ES 345, like a mid 60s one. You realize the value of that guitar. But the one guitar that can kind of do it all is a Telecaster, simply with the 2 pickups and the tone and volume control. I've done, you know, we do like these tribute shows, like when we're not doing our original music, and I've done the Allman Brothers, you know, we've done, I mean, Jimi Hendrix. I wouldn't use a Telecaster for Jimi Hendrix, although it can be done. You know, I would certainly think of using a Strat first, you know. But a Telecaster, when you roll the tone off, not all the way, but with the tone control, you can, you know, I mean, to me, it's like it's doing what a Gibson does at times, you know, and it's also a very transparent guitar for rhythm, and it has the depth and balls of, you know, for soloing, you know, depending on what you're doing with your amps, and maybe a couple of pedals to increase gain, you know. But yeah, I would say Telecaster is the most versatile guitar in the universe.
Brilliant. And it sort of makes sense, because right now I'm thinking that there are so many people from so many genres, from country to even I heard metal players using a Telecaster. So
Yeah.
that's amazing.
Oh man, we do this outdoor gig on Sundays, you know, socially distanced, safe, and we did it through the whole winter. You know, it would be you know, below 0 centigrade. It would be like 28 degrees Fahrenheit. We'd be outside playing for 3 hours straight, freezing, but sharing music. There'd be hundreds of people would come, you know, and we play some, you know, we'll play some like old Black Sabbath and Deep Purple, you know, we'll play like, you know, War Pigs, and play it on a Telecaster.
Oh wow.
I mean, everything. I mean, the guitar I grab when I go to a gig, I always have a Telecaster. If I do a session, I might bring a Gretsch also, or a Rickenbacker, or a Strat, or a Les Paul, or, you know, whatever. But there's always a Telecaster in my bag, you know.
Amazing.
Yeah, that's the guitar. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, right now I'm definitely thinking about how I can acquire one. So that's brilliant. Thank you. And well, in closing, I really want to ask you, obviously there's still a lot of uncertainty about this year and about going forward, but we're hopeful that things are gonna go into a semi-normal state soon enough. What are your plans as of now?
Well, I want to. My record comes out in July, and if I can interject for a second, my website is marcribler.com, MARCRIBLER, And if friends and fans would go there, and I greatly appreciate everyone supporting the music and allowing us to continue to do what we do. Right now we have the Shattered single, and I'm doing autographed copies of it. You know, I gladly sign it personally to anyone that wants it, and we've been sending them to Europe and, you know, all around the world. So anyone that would like to purchase it, it would be an honor to share my music with you. I also have some CDs there, previous CDs. The album will be out later in the year. So the next step is touring, is like getting my band together. I mean, will it be in 2021? I hope, but it might not be till, you know, early 22, you know. Also, we've been talking about going, you know, back out on the road with Stevie Van Zandt with the Disciples of Soul when things are better. I know Bruce wants to do a tour with Steven as well, so we'll see how that pans out. And just really getting back to, you know, sharing our music in person with people to have the exchange that creates that magic, you know, and can, you know, it fuels us and it fuels, you know, our audience, you know. So I know from playing outside on the weekends in 28-degree weather and freezing cold weather, people are dying for live music.
Absolutely.
They're
Yeah.
missing it like it's their family member, you know? Yeah.
Yeah. We definitely need that. And we're definitely feeling the absence of that.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for taking the time to speak to me. And I'm really hopeful that, you know, this year or soon enough, I'll be able to catch you live, and really looking forward to your album.
Thank you so much, Edward. And maybe we could do this again when my record comes out around July. And let's stay in touch. We have each other's email addresses, and as soon as we come over to your part of Europe, man, it'd be great for you to come. Or if you're in the States, let me know, you know, and come to a show, man.
That'd be brilliant.
It was a pleasure.
As well. Thank you.
Yeah.
Have a great day.
Man. Have a great day.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Be safe, man.
As
Bye.
well. Bye.